Hi, everybody. My name is Juan. I'm here today joined by Paul McLeod, founder of Bespoke Analytics, and he's also the president. And we are going to talk today, I believe, about data quality, the joys of data quality, the nightmares of data quality, and so on and so forth. So, Paul, would you like us to start with, what have you seen in the field in terms of data quality challenges? What are the kind of top three, top five things that you've seen in your 20 years of career?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Good to see you again, Juan. Um,
Good
so
to see you.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, definitely, it's pervasive. It doesn't matter the organization insofar as how advanced they are, how big they are. Everybody's got data quality. It's a fact of life. It's nothing to be ashamed about. It just happens. But the challenge is that or the issue is that you know, data quality costs companies money. It's the kind of bottom line. I mean, ultimately, in some way or another, you're losing out on revenue opportunities, or your processes are overly costly, or you're making poor decisions, or making decisions based on poor data unknowingly, and potentially losing money that way. And the other thing to think about is that AI is coming, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
going to compound that issue. If you've got underlying data quality issues in your systems, what AI does is it trolls through your data and gives you its opinion on what to do based on the data it's got. So if your data is not good, it's you're not going to get as much out of this kind of tools as you could do. And as
Mm-hmm.
you see it, we see it all over. So yeah, it falls into I guess three main areas, the kind of data issues that we will see. We'll see basically missing data. Somebody forgets to fill in an email address or something like that. Um, you know, uh, Incorrect data and source systems. Somebody's putting in a loan into a banking application, and they categorize a corporate loan as a personal loan. That filters up to reporting. You got executive looking at their loan book and saying, we're doing really good in our personal loan portfolio. Yep. It's because you got $100 million corporate loan in there, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the other is really the third one is data integration issues. So situations where you've got variances of data between two systems, for all manner of reasons. Maybe it's that a breakdown in an integration process, something or something didn't happen at a source system in time for a data feed that takes place. Maybe the business rules are old because it's changed. They're doing different things. They're categorizing things differently in the source systems, and the data warehouse hasn't caught up. So all of those things, can attribute to data quality. And it's hard to say, particularly if, there's no point in trying to say, there's fault. We just need to eliminate creation of data errors. You're never going to get rid of them. They're always going to be there. It's just the nature of capturing and transitioning data. The key is trying to be proactive about it.
Yeah. So, uh, from everything that you have mentioned, obviously, have you ever been in a situation where a client had perfect data quality?
Yeah, yeah, never, never. It doesn't happen. I mean, it can.
it,
I mean,
it does not exist.
no. Well, I mean, it's well. You got to think about what takes place within an organization,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll have people that their job, part of their job process is doing data entry. They're a
Mm-hmm.
salesperson. They're a they're an assistant. They're customer service manager. Their job is to record that information, get on to the next task. So they're incentivized in some way or other to be efficient in that process. Invariably you're gonna miskey something. Maybe even it's not your
Mm-hmm.
fault. Somebody fills out a bunch of paperwork, great, go ahead and put it all in there. They didn't put in an email address. Maybe they don't have one. Yeah. And you miss that piece. And so, okay, now we don't have an email address. We got to chase this piece up. You send out emails, you get caught up in your day. It's these things are going to happen, and as I said before, you're going to have data quality, the business rules that drive an organization change on a continuing basis. That's the nature of business. their business environment changes, and so now they have to change how they do business, which means that different data is important to them, and so now they have to record new data, which isn't necessarily accounted for in downstream integration of data. So all those things compound. But and at the end of the day, what it comes down to, especially, and actually it's almost worse in organizations that are more mature from a data perspective, that have more automated systems, because the data then flows through faster to end users through that automated process. And so, when these data quality issues appear, they actually have an effect sooner than in an organization where maybe they don't have a lot of automated systems, because the data quality is out there and nobody's actually able to leverage that data. So it doesn't necessarily show up and create problems. The thing that's interesting about it, though, the challenge to it, though, is it's really hard to be proactive in this space. If you think about the process where data quality issues come to light, it usually comes from an end user, which is almost the worst case. It's discovered because somebody's looking at a report and goes, this loan balance just does not make sense. I'm the loan manager. And we were talking about this in a meeting today, and I'm like, there's no way we have that many retail loans out. So they start talking to people, and we look at it, and it's like, oh, the data warehouse is busted. You're miscategorized. Well, when did that happen? We haven't made any changes and all that stuff. And so you go through this process where people are writing reports and queries and identifying the fact that, okay, somebody miscategorized the loan in the back end system. Okay. And how do, and of course, then the question comes out, from the end user. Well, this is a big deal. How can we track this? So we can write an exception report. We do some queries, hand it off, get people. The problem is these are all manual processes. This is all a process where you're doing some query to find these things. You're writing a report. You're figuring out who to send it to. Finally, figure out who to send it to. You email it to someone and say, hey, we've got some problem with the data here. And you go back and do what else you're doing. Try and remember, did they get back to me? Send a follow-up email. Did you manage to fix that stuff? Oh, I haven't got to it yet. I'll get to it. Time goes on, you're getting feedback, still got issues with the data. You run the report, is it the same data? Is it new data that's an issue? Send it off to the person again. And each time that you're doing that, everybody's doing it from scratch. They're inventing that process every time. Another issue comes up in another part of the system somewhere, missing emails. You're writing a report to do this again. You're sending it to somebody else. You're having to remember to send something to follow up with them. Maybe it's even a different person. So the problem is it's a terribly manual and time-consuming process that's just not terribly efficient.
So with this amalgamation of potential, so everything that touches data can be entropy, from what you're telling me. So how would where do you start actually? So when you talk to your clients or potential clients, what is the kind of the roadmap that you set for them? What are the first few steps that they need to take in order to kind of put clarity into chaos, if you like?
Yeah. Really, it comes down to you almost need to kind of define an approach of how you're going to handle data errors in your environment, in your system. You almost need an ownership mechanism of this is how somebody needs to be have ownership of the process for managing data errors in the systems. You can push it back to individual systems and say you've got responsibility for ownership in the client database. Say that's all well and good, but that doesn't necessarily help the downstream if an error shows up in reporting down there to be able to identify that it came originally from the client database. That miscategorization is an exact client in some way. So you almost need to have centralize in some way your ability to track data quality issues, either with a team, and you need tools. You need tools, really, is what it comes down to. And all the pieces that you need to do. People do, but they just do it manually and they do it differently and they do it inefficiently. So really the key is some sort of tool that allows you to automate those processes, a tool that allows you to very quickly, write queries that can identify errors, and then have that be automatically monitored and do things like say, okay, when an error is discovered, it can be sent to an appropriate person and tracked when these errors first appeared, and allow them to do things like say, oh, this is not an error, or yes, it is an error, let me address it, and get reminded of the fact that these are your list of errors that you have responsibility for, you need to address, and manage that whole life cycle in a centralized way, so that you don't have this nightmare scenario where you've got 4 or 5 different people all chasing down errors in different ways, tracking them in different ways, having to go back and remember what email somebody, having to get out an old report to see if the errors are still the same, if there's any new ones. And then the other piece to that, which is really important, is even aging those errors out. So they shift. Very rarely do you have an error that's a persistent error that goes on forever. We got a problem with the fact that there's missing email addresses. That gets pushed to somebody. They start fixing the emails addresses. They recognize in their own space that we need to amend our processes to make sure that we're capturing our emails, and then that problem disappears. And you can keep looking for it, but then you almost need to age that test out and say, okay, that's no longer an issue, or we're tracking it, but it's good. We no longer have a way of verifying that there no longer is an issue. So you need a mechanism where you can potentially take these queries and these tests out of scope because they're no longer relevant, and introduce new ones in that same environment. And then that way you've got and it's all part of a data governance initiative, really, when you think about it. It's all about how do we as an organization make sure that our data is correct, is curated, is governed. This is a big piece of it, is the data quality side of it. And by having a centralized tool that allows you to track that and gives you a process for managing and correcting and tracking errors and the time it takes to correct them, then that just allows you to be more proactive in that space. The errors get solved sooner because there'll be visibility to the fact that there is errors out there. It can be a report that's sent up in the kind of, in the data governance team's chain saying we identified these errors with miscategorization of loans. They've been corrected, and people can get kudos for that. Well done, great. You've corrected that. That's a big deal. That's helping us down the road. Or, inversely, why are these still out there? This is a big deal. Don't you realize the significance of the fact that we need to correct these categorizations, kind of thing. So it just, you need that mechanism. Otherwise, it's really, really hard to trace the success and the state of your data quality within your data landscape.
I'm just thinking, so obviously it's a combination of data governance tools and well-defined process that is either driven by the tool or a combination of the tool and the organization, obviously. Would you agree that data quality should be part of the overall arcing component of data strategy? So it's something that you touch base in the data strategy piece, and then you kind of define the processes that are going to drive the data quality to a Lean Six Sigma level where you're comfortable with the margin of error that you have in the data quality.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting thing to talk about. It absolutely is, because strategically it's important for the organization. What I've found though is it's really hard to get engagement with the business on data quality until you actually get to the point where you have gone through automation processes at a system. It's all about the kind of all about the ROI from a standpoint of their engagement. You think about it as if we're going in, say, to a client, and we're looking at helping them define a data strategy that's maybe taking them from a very low level of data maturity to something much more significant. The things that makes the biggest impact to them at the outset is actually automating that data flow, and that has massive feedback right away. You talk about quality as important, but because they haven't seen the benefit of other things, and they're looking and focusing on the benefit of that other, the other automation components. The data quality always is a little bit, yes, that's important, but it kind of gets pushed down a little bit. It's later on when those processes and then those data quality issues start coming out, that it starts to get the focus and the attention it needs. But you need to talk about it early on in that data strategization so that people are aware that this is going to be something that comes. And so when it does start to happen, they're like, okay, right, we're ready for that next step now. Now we need to implement data quality. I'm not necessarily sure it's good to do before you start doing all your integrations, just because you won't necessarily realize a tangible benefit if you're not really leveraging your data in the first place from your source system. Yeah. So, conversely, if there is issues in processes, they don't necessarily rely on your integrated data landscape. Like my invoicing process is broken. I keep trying to send out invoices every month, but we have a 10% rejection rate because our email addresses are wrong or they're missing. Then yeah, in that instance, data quality is going to be a big deal, and someone's going to want to track it.
Yeah, of course,
right away. That's why I guess where I think it is that you finally get focus from the business when the data quality actually has an impact.
Yeah. All right. So you mentioned actually tools. So maybe we can deep dive a little bit on the tools that you have in mind or that you have experience with. If I come back to the beginning of the conversation, you mentioned AI is coming. So have you seen any AI tool that can kind of help with the data quality issues, or are there more simplified versions? Do you need AI in order to drive data quality? I suppose that's my question.
I think it's still early days in this space. I think it's going to come. I'd be surprised if it doesn't. Just because any labor intensive process that requires trawling through lots of data is going to be a target for clever AI solutions. It's more about it's interesting that people actually do the steps they need to do to correct the issues. It's hard to have a process that's a manual process. And so for me, the biggest benefit that a tool brings is the process that gives you an environment to automate those data quality checks. So a place where you can write your queries, so you're not having to create a report every time that you find some issue. Okay, I'll create another exception report, and here's another exception report. I don't even know if that exception report's even being run by anybody, even works for any reason. Or I'm writing a query and exporting it to an Excel spreadsheet and emailing it to somebody. You need to have some way of systemizing that to say, okay, we need a tool that allows us to write, different types of queries against all of our systems, so that we've got a flexible way of saying, okay, we need to check on data quality between two systems or in a back-end system or whatever other kind of scenarios you might come up with. We got missing data, bad data. You need a tool that allows you to create those queries in a managed way, so you can almost create like tests. Say, okay, here's my test for missing emails. Here's my test for, differences between the source system and the data warehouse. Here's my test for, validating the client list of customers against the loans that they've got, kind of thing, to make sure that we haven't miscategorized a loan as commercial when it should be residential or vice versa. And then that way that'll just having that in itself then gives you the ability to say, okay, let's start quantifying what our data errors are, or data tests that we're having. These are the areas that we're testing data. So that's the first piece, is somewhere where it can actually give you a centralized repository that helps you control and govern those tests you have put together. Then it's the process around how do you then deliver that to an end user to affect change, the actor that can make a difference. because invariably it's going to be different in most instances. Sometimes it'll be, we've got to go back to the data entry people that are responsible for the loan system, and they're going to have to do some corrections in data entry. Or maybe it's the data engineers that need to correct an old business rule, or perhaps a business rule that has always been broken, but nobody noticed before, because all of a sudden now some data is important in the system that wasn't before, because the company's doing some new business, and so now they need to analyze the data differently, and they're recognizing the fact that in the past the data wasn't good, or we hadn't accommodated for it properly. So you need to be able to identify, okay, this test that I've got, who needs to kind of deal with the results of this test, who needs to be able to act on the output from this test so they can affect change and correct these errors. And then you need a mechanism to track, how long these issues have been in place. So, okay, we detected it, the error was first detected, last week, Tuesday, it was sent off to so-and-so to correct. Is it corrected yet? Tests can be run again. Oh, those tests have all gone away. It's all been fixed. They're doing a great job. They've fixed up, out of the 50, user accounts that didn't have email addresses, we're down to 3. Great. So you've then got a mechanism to track all that process. How good is our data quality? How are we improving it? It gives you things to measure it, action on it, and to actually ensure that the data is getting corrected. So those things are the important piece. Centralized area to be able to, contain those queries and manage those queries. A way of distributing the output automatically to the people who have responsibility for correcting those errors in whatever way it is, and a way to monitor that process to say, okay, this is when it was detected. How long did it take for it to be addressed? Is it even still addressed? Is it still an issue now? And with that process in place, you then really efficient and automated way to manage the data quality issues that are going to appear in your organization. But it means that you can act on them faster. You can be more proactive in dealing with these data issues.
That's a very thorough answer. Thank you very much. So
I hope it wasn't too much.
Say that for the sake of argument. No. I was just frowning because I wanted to pay attention to what you were saying. But so say that you have taken these steps. You mentioned ROI a little earlier in the conversation, and it's basically, you identify the major issues. So somebody that comes to you with the data quality issues because they know. But my question is, what are the things that they don't know? So how often do you recognize, that after implementing these steps, the delta is bigger than they thought it was? Is it a common thing across the board? Yeah.
I mean, it is interesting because having these tools also allow you to be proactive in a way that is difficult to do without them. And so one of the things that you can, definitely fixing them is an important thing users, but actually it's almost being able to advise them if there is issues early is good. One thing that I have seen that organizations end up having to do, and they do it handily, is they will reconcile between their systems. Now they'll look and say, okay, we've got our general ledger and our kind of retail system. And what we want to do is make sure that, first of all, they align, because there's a data integration path between them, but also maybe they align with the data warehouse where we're consuming this data. And so they might go and run, on a daily basis, run reports from both, put them side by side, and do tick and bash, or maybe create little spreadsheets that kind of, you do lookups between the two things. It's all great, but again, it's all manual solutions. But with the automated tool process in place, you can automate that. You can have it actually sit there and say, okay, these are queries that we want to verify between multiple systems, have them run, and have them produce an output automatically every day that says systems are aligned. So you get the green light, say everything's good. Whoop, we had a failure in an overnight process. And so, the data is incomplete. It's been loaded into the data warehouse. We can tell the users there's an issue. Don't try and use the data. And it's about trust too. This is the interesting thing. So when you get to that more mature environment with your data landscape, that the end users need to trust that the data they're getting, if they're going to rely on it, is good. So the more you can put in place to kind of let them know the data is good, or the data's, we've got issues, don't use the data right now, or turn around, corrections of the data as soon as they notify very quickly, and be able to track to them the fact that, yes, we did discover all the issues. Yes, we've gone through the process and we're monitoring it and it's being corrected. All that builds trust with the users and using that data. If you don't have that stuff in place and you're not good at correcting those data, it can destroy the trust in that centralized, those data repositories, and all the money and time and effort they spend into building them can be undermined by the end users building their own reporting infrastructure because they don't trust what comes out of the data warehouse. So it's a really important thing to address, and it's really important to be able to be proactive, as you were indicating there, to help the users kind of, correct the information or test for data to make sure that you see the errors early before the end users discover it.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, if you went to try to define ROI, how do you define ROI with data quality, which is somewhat you can put metrics on, but the output of it is a little bit more abstract? Have you come up with any particular frameworks to define KPIs for data quality? Do these solutions provide you with a framework? And ultimately, what will be the impact on the bottom line of an organization to have a high level of data quality?
Really hard to come up with a definitive way of measuring the ROI, because it's different in every case. The tools, absolutely. I mean, we use Time Extender's holistic suite, their data quality tool, which is fantastic. It does all the things we've been talking about on the automation side of things. And it provides, it gives you those KPIs for data quality, because it can show you these are the error counts that have been discovered. This is how long there've been errors. This is how many this is the correction rate on them. So it gives you all of that ability to track it. And the ROI, it really comes down to so many things that can measure. So it might be that you're saving time and money in correcting the errors, because it's not, your resources are having to spend less time manually creating, error correction processes and checking up on them and chasing down end users who got an email and forgot about it and things of that nature. Or it could be the fact that you now are saving the company or generating 20% more revenue because, you've corrected, being able to correct data that allows a billing process to work correctly now. And all of a sudden you can collect a whole bunch of money or bill for stuff that you were missing before because that things were incorrectly categorized in the back end, which was stopping your invoicing process. Or maybe the whole thing is, okay, we're doing some sort of capital allocation based on what we understand our client list to be, because we want to try and grow a particular type of business, and you made the wrong decision because it's all miscategorized, So all of those things
right.
make massive differences. Really, all you can do from a measurement perspective is from a consistent measurement perspective is, how many errors do we have outstanding? How quickly are we addressing them? And how long are they staying in that, and how frequently are they coming up? So, a way of quantifying data quality around, how many are there and how quickly are we addressing? The ROI in the back end as to, what is the impact of correcting that data? As I said, it just varies, but it's an important thing to recognize. And I think it's a good thing for the team to be, to understand as well. So they know when this thing gets fixed, that actually allowed the company to kind of save $20,000 on expenses, because we no longer had to purchase as many X, Y, and Z things because we don't need them. Or, we were able to collect revenue, and we're able to do. I think that's an important piece to it. But it's hard to come up with a one consistent ROI measurement kind of thing on that.
Okay, I suppose I have one last question, perhaps. So, from your experience, and having 20 years of experience in BI and data management and analytics,
I'm a little older than
who
that.
is the first person that maybe more even. Yeah. Well, I'm speaking about bespoke analytics. Sorry. So,
Yeah.
considering your vast experience in the field, who is the department or the function or the person that actually raise their hand and say, Houston, we have a problem, we need help? Who are the persons that are actually reaching out in search of something that can be tangible and
Yeah.
solidification of the future proof?
Ultimately, it falls down to the IT team or the data team. Because you need somebody
Mm-hmm.
who can manage the technology. Because ultimately, those are the people who have to get involved to just to find the problems, or to identify the causes, and
Mm-hmm.
then hand them. So that's really the team that ends up uh, owning the technology suite, at least from a
Mm-hmm.
ownership of the process overall, like from a data governance perspective. That has to involve business as well. That needs to be a collaborative ownership of the
Right.
business and IT, because IT can put that stuff together and say these are the problems, but unless the business steps up and says this is important and needs to be addressed, then it's too easy to
Mm-hmm.
ignore the email from IT. I'm busy. I have my work to do. It needs to be a thing where it's like, understood. If you don't correct me, you got to speak to the CEO. It's not me saying you need to make sure that data is correct. So it ultimately the IT end up owning the tool set and the mechanical process of identifying the errors and distributing them. But then there needs to be, as I said, the ownership from the business to say, and this needs to be corrected because it's important for the organization.
Good. And to that end, so what would you say to the IT leaders in the room today
Mm.
if they are considering data quality solutions?
Okay, simple. I know you've got issues, um, and they do too. Come speak to us. We deal with this all the time with our clients. We help them put in place really robust solutions, and we can help turn a really challenging and difficult situation into a process that you can manage really well and bring real benefit and be a hero in your organization by correcting the data quickly. Yeah.
Perfect. To the ones attending, thank you so much for listening. We are a little bit over the 30 minutes, so I hope you indulge us with your company until now. I hope you learn a few things. Paul, thank you, as always, for providing your wisdom to the rest of us. And have a great day. Thank you for
Yeah.
everything.
Thank you, Juan. Nice speaking to you again. Take care.
Take care, everybody.